Now let's look at the science of tempo. So tempo is a really debated element of program design. Some trainers just basically dismiss it, and some see it as essential. And generally, our rule is tempo really falls in the middle ground. I think it's important, but I also can see the downsides of overemphasizing tempo. So let's really go into its applications. And first of all, we need to understand what each number means. The first digit is the eccentric phase. The second is the pause in the stretch position or time spent there. The third digit is the concentric or lifting phase. And the fourth digit is the pause in the fully shortened position or the position with no mechanical load. So first digit, we'll say 4 seconds down. 4210 is a 2-second pause in the stretch, 1 second lifting, and no pause at that top position. Pretty simple. Now, when we write it, we need to look at doing it always in this way so it's consistent, because sometimes this will look a little bit different because a lat pull down actually starts with a concentric phase first rather than an eccentric phase. So I still teach people that the first digit is always the eccentric phase and the third digit is always the concentric phase. What we can also see is a line of X, a marker of X, and X basically means explosive. So for some lifts, you might do a 30XO. So try and lift the weight as explosively as possible. So how do we apply it to training? So for beginners in skill development, controlled tempos are effective. Okay, slow eccentric, multi-fast concentric, intentional pauses at movements range, end of range can improve body awareness. I really like doing this. Okay, for beginners in skill development, I don't want people to rush through lifts. A lot of people rush through lifts, and that what they do is they basically take all kind of tension off the muscle. They use a lot of elasticity, and they don't really learn stability throughout that range of motion. Controlled tempos do this. Now, you don't need to have a metronome or a stopwatch to do it, but generally giving people a guideline, control the eccentric, pause, then lift with some speed and some intention is generally going to be enough for most people. Now, for hypertrophy, it's a little bit more nuances there. Okay, so slow eccentric phase will increase time under tension and muscle damage, can reduce the total volume, and longer eccentrics aren't really associated with muscle growth. And some new research has come out showing majority of muscle growth happens in the concentric. I find that to be a little bit odd because exercises like squats, for example, are really good for hypertrophy and they have a pretty solid eccentric phase, whereas sled pushes have no eccentric but don't really give a ton of hypertrophy. So again, a controlled eccentric and a explosive concentric with the ability to recruit more muscle fibers due to what's called um, it's not rate potentiation. I forgot the word right now. It will pop back into my head. But it's where the faster you contract and the harder you try and push the load, you're going to recruit more muscle fibers. It's called the size principle behind it. That's the one. Now, key takeaways for hypertrophy: balance. You want to make sure that you don't overemphasize any phase because you're going to sacrifice some benefits. But I really do like to tailor the tempo to maximize the stimulus. So, for example, the leg extension really trains the quads, particularly direct feminine shorten range. Adding a 2-second pause there will really overload that. Putting a pause at the bottom of the bench press will overload the stretch position and get rid of the stretch reflex. So these tempo variations are really good for standardizing lift and making sure our progressive overload is done in the right way. I'm sure we can all agree that there's a difference between doing a leg extension with a pause at the top versus just swinging the weight up there. They're both going to develop hypertrophy over time. One will be safer and one is more easy to quantify progress. I would always pick the one that's safer and is easy to quantify process rather than just pushing it out. Now, for maximal strength, a little bit different. Okay, we can actually modulate the tempo based on the goal of the person and where their individual weaknesses and needs are. So slow descents can improve control and technique, particularly for lifters who lose tension during the phase. So squats, for example, really important. Bench press, really important in powerlifting. Pauses in the stretch position can be really useful. In fact, in powerlifting, you need the pause on the chest to actually for it to be a light lift. So same thing with deadlifts, you can pause at certain parts of the range of motion to build up strength there. And the concentric phase for maximal strength, the movement should be executed with maximal intent, even if it slows down and looks slow. Because again, we're using the size principle to recruit as many muscles as possible, many muscle fibers. Now, power training, speed and explosiveness. So we do rapid eccentrics. We don't do a barbell snatch, for example, and we don't lower it down under control. It goes down quickly. Exercise Olympic lifts will often eliminate this entirely, though, and end sets generally when speed decreases, okay? There is a cutoff point for it, and you can qualify that with different units, so velocity units, but for most people, for power training, you start to end the set as soon as the speed decreases. It's a pretty simple rule of thumb that you can do really well as a coach. That works well. And then you can add tempo manipulation to overcome weak points, so target eccentric work, and also adding pauses. So if someone's really struggling at a deadlift at that mid shin point, what you might do is give them a lighter weight and get them to pause 2 seconds in that position and then push through very quickly. This will overcome that weak point and make them stronger throughout the whole exercise. Then injury recovery and safety, generally slower tempos are ideal because they're going to allow the client to regain confidence in the movement, reducing the likelihood of avoiding it long term. So it's not a long-term strategy to do for forever, but start people slower eccentric, slower concentric, controlling that. It's going to help them recover from the injury and also feel more confident in the gym, which is the most important thing that you can do. So in our opinion, tempo is really important. And in the programs that we've got listed down for you to download, every single one of them has suggested tempos there. Now, they don't need to be timed with a stopwatch, but the more we stick to the tempos and the rest periods and the guidelines, the better results your clients are going to get.